Welcome to our weekly discussion, Moral Side of the News. I'm Shawn Kaelin with the WHAS Crusade for Children. Joining us today, our distinguished panel, Reverend Daniel Corrie Shull, Burnett Avenue Baptist Church, Rabbi Joe Rook's Rapport, the Temple, Father Tony Smith, Archdiocese of Louisville, and Reverend Harriett Akins-Banman, New Albany Centenary United Methodist Church. As we approach the one-year anniversary of the mass shooting at Old National Bank, gun violence remains a significant issue in our community and across the country. It was a focus this week at the 14th annual Interfaith Iftar.
A few weeks from now, Louisville will once again come to grips with one of our most tragic days in our history, the mass shooting at Old National Bank last year on April 10th. Tonight, Marianne Elliott took another public step to bringing a focus to the grief that she is facing. Other gun violence survivors and family members also spoke tonight. WHAS 1119's Alex Dieterer and photojournalist Elijah McKenzie report from Second Presbyterian Church.
So when your heart feels crushed, Marianne, remember his tenderness that made your heart expand in the first place.
Marianne Elliott, reading aloud a passage she wrote in her grief journal last November, just months after her husband Tommy was killed in the Old National Bank mass shooting.
When your breath feels shallow and anxious, remember his grounding that helped you feel secure along the way.
Marianne, taking the stage at the 14th annual Iftar, the first dinner that Tommy has not attended in over a decade. The theme of this year's event, Standing Together Against Gun Violence.
With gun violence and being affected by it, there is a lot of confusion. It will never make sense.
Marianne is one of 3 strong women sharing their stories of gun violence and what's on the other side.
And I was face to face with a team of doctors and nurses who said, "Whitney, you are a miracle. You were shot 12 times.
Whitney Austin, a survivor of a mass shooting.
It's just not my problem, it's everybody's issue. And it's not just a West End problem, South End, East End, all over. It's all of our problems.
Miss Rose Smith, who lost her son to gun violence. People of different backgrounds and religions all together under one roof tonight, sharing in a commonality, compassion for others, and the end to gun violence.
Gun violence impacts the individuals, their families, communities.
Dr. Muhammad Babar, a close friend to the Elliots.
Tommy was looking forward to his retirement and how he was going to spend his retired years with his children and then grandchildren.
Victims of gun violence had their lives and futures taken from them, but their loved ones keep their legacy and love alive. In Louisville,
and when the joy has left you dry and alone, remember his laughter that fed your soul.
Alex Dieterer,
because love never dies.
The WHAS 1119 on your side.
So panel, I turn to you. More tragic stories continue to happen daily across our community. What needs to happen?
Well, I was at the Iftar dinner. We go every year. It was it's always, a wonderful experience from an interfaith perspective, having so many people, together. And such a wonderful thing the Second Pres, sponsors and hosts for the community. But the focus on gun violence, the 3 women who spoke, they were all very personal stories. I mean, it wasn't a political rally or pushing for one bill or another. It was that let's do something. I mean, we all recognize this is a problem, and we have to do something. Whitney, who spoke, I think was the most significant, which was just safe gun storage, locks and safe storage, and education on that can make a huge difference, has made a huge difference in many communities. I mean, something like 80% of the suicides by firearms among teens happen with the family gun. And just safe storage. I mean, and that's something that gun owners, and gun safety advocates can get around without having to get into the politics that so much divides us. Mm-hmm. And that was what the real takeaway was. We all have to do something, and there's plenty that we can do that really will make a difference, as opposed to just debating this, forever. That as if there were nothing that we could do against this just torrent of events.
I think it's interesting that as we round out our legislative session here in Kentucky, that sensible gun legislation continues to fail in the General Assembly and to not be taken seriously by our lawmakers. I agree that safe gun storage and those types of measures are important, but I think when we look at the gun violence across the nation, it's critical that we begin to take a look at other comparable nations and see that they don't have these types of gun issues. And it's because of the gun legislation that in those nations that they have employed. We need to get serious about that in the United States and not continue to be held hostage by the NRA. Gun legislation does not mean that there's not a place for people who hunt and people who would like to exercise their Second Amendment right. But responsible gun legislation would ensure that what happened at Old National Bank would not happen or would happen less in this nation than what is happening now.
Well, I will speak as a gun owner, and like most responsible gun owners, we do agree, number one, there are too many guns out there, and there are too many, excuse my French, idiots who are using them. All the safety measures and all that, that's good, and even to your point though, Corrie, I would say the difficulty is political in the sense of we are a country of laws, et cetera, and you keep hearing the Second Amendment issues. The other countries that you're speaking of or thinking of, like Australia, there is no constitutional right to have such. My argument, and it is constantly, even I will make that now, it needs to be political. We need to be able to put the Second Amendment up for a referendum on voting for our citizens. In other words, I keep hearing, well, it meant this, that. Well, whatever it means, and whether we agree with the U.S. Supreme Court or not, the Supreme Court has ruled a number of times, at least 3 times that I'm aware of, 4 times, that the right is there and we must protect that right. But let's review that as to what the Second Amendment means. And we can place limitations in that from a constitutional perspective. But I think we do need to have the courage to put it on the ballot for voting. And others have said to me, well, no, if you do that, they'll never pass anything. I don't know. But it is, yes, it's troubling. It rends your heart when you see what violence people do with these implements. And I've hunted quite often most of my life, et cetera. And even the International Olympics Committee recognizes there's an art to this whole thing, the whole thing of the skiing and the shooting and whatever. But we do have, again, too many available to us readily, and we do have too many people who shouldn't have them access to that. We've seen some of the younger the moms and dads now are being sued because of that access stuff. But I think rather than react in any form, we need to really consider what's available to us and take that constitutional direction. Because I think, I would hope the American populace would realize that what was said in that Second Amendment like that needs to be redone, because what happened then is obviously not available now. It's much more dangerous. I'm sorry. But that's it.
Well, until we become, until bipartisan comes together on one page, we'll continue to have this conversation. It doesn't matter how many petitions we sign and how many rallies we hold and how many heartbreaking stories are shared. Until action is taken, the cycle continues. And that's what's so disheartening and frustrating. And I'm glad that you're a responsible gun owner, but the ones that we're hearing about are probably the smaller of that population, of gun owners, I'm thinking, in general. And the other piece that concerns me are gun shows that are held. The one that comes to Louisville around this time every year really makes me uncomfortable because of those news stories we've heard in the past about how easy it is to walk up to a vendor outside a store, outside that convention hall, and to purchase something illegally, cash on the table and walk away with a gun. So until we take some measures there and are smart, we continue to keep the problem going.
Yeah, and I think that what Tony was saying about the Second Amendment, we recognize that, you know, everything in the Constitution, all the rights that are given to us in the Constitution, they all come with responsibilities. They're all balanced with, you know, with limitations on those rights, particularly when, you know, my right, you know, can be, you know, inflicting, you know, damage on someone else's rights.
Correct,
And somehow when we get to the Second Amendment, that isn't a conversation. It's an absolute right, and anything you want to do that would be just smart legislation that we could all kind of get around, that the vast majority of gun owners, of NRA members, would even support, you know, on things like, you know, automatic weapons or semi-automatic weapons and things like that. We can't go anywhere because that's a constitutional right. So does freedom of speech, but you don't get to, you know, scream fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
You know, so, you know, freedom of religion, but religion, you know, can't be some, you know, endeavor that's intended to take advantage of the people within it, or something like that. But we all operate within rights and responsibilities, and we need to get that balance back.
That's the old saying goes, we are all for legislation and regulation, but we're not in favor of being regulated, type thing. And there is, as you mentioned the Constitution, my reading, I don't know if they teach civics anymore in schools, but there's not a single right in the Constitution that's absolute.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, but you know, when you frame the issue as not wanting to be regulated, I think that we could frame the issue as wanting to keep everyone safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can be a responsible gun owner and still walk into a public space at a bad time and be a victim of a mass shooting, which often occur with assault rifles. And we know that the Founding Fathers were not speaking of assault weapons in the Second Amendment. They were more so talking about muskets and whatever other types of guns they had at that point.
Which brings up the, I mean, don't want to dominate here, but language is important. And when we say, for instance, assault weapons, one of the reasons you recall we had a ban against certain, and it went the way of all. Why did it go away? Well, because the legislators realized they had no definition of what this means. A lot of people say, again, an example, AR-15. Is that an assault rifle? No, AR simply refers to Armalite Corporation, the one who produces it. It's not an automatic rifle. It's not a, so we have to be very careful, and that's the problem of legislation, is trying to distinguish what it means to say and what it does say. Okay, but I agree with you, Corrie. We need to do work on some way to.
I think one of the distinctions can be just having some boundary or some prohibition against the public handling of guns that can do a certain amount of damage with a certain amount of time. So when you talk about AR-15s, I mean, I don't know that anybody needs one of those to protect themselves, to hunt. Those are weapons that can do a tremendous amount of damage in a very short amount of time.
Absolutely.
And are a hazard to the public.
To the police force.
And to the police.
And Old National Bank example. I mean, the courage of the policemen who entered there to limit the damage, outgunned by the assailant that they were trying to subdue. I mean, it's a challenge to our entire community.
Yeah, it really is. So I think those types of just common sense strategies would help us to prevent, you know, the gun violence that we see in our communities. And I have been in spaces recently where people were openly carrying their AR-15s.
Sure.
And I mean, strapped across them, and they were really showcasing them, parading them. I don't think they were there to do any harm to anyone. They wanted, it was almost fashionable. But I thought how horrible this would be if there were any type of altercation where people began to actually use those weapons to harm other people, how many people would be caught in the crossfire, how much damage could be done in such a brief period of time.
But also the silent message of carrying that weapon. I don't have to speak anything, and I don't have to show you that I'm loading it, but the silent message that I have the power that you do not. And how does that limit speech and action, good action, or working together. And I like the words I've heard with boundaries and balance and common sense.
That's why all this points out again, we need some good legislation. And I think the basic, whatever legislation you propose or pass, it's got that constitutional amendment type thing. We need to address that again.
It's fascinating listening to you all discuss this. I think we've got the group right here to help. Let's lock you all in a room and I'm oversimplifying it, but I don't know, you made some very good points from all sides. So thanks for watching and listening to the Moral Side of the News. On to topic 2, I'd like to take some time this morning to highlight a remarkable young child, Oakland, who is benefiting from funds donated by you to the WHAS Crusade for Children. You might just recognize someone else in this story as well. Take a look.
Norton Children's Hospital recently celebrated the grand opening of its epilepsy monitoring unit, funded in part by the WHAS Crusade for Children. So how fitting that one of the first patients in the new space is the daughter of a local firefighter and one we all know well. Brooke Hash visited with the Cardins during a checkup this week.
Blakey. Okay. This is Oakland. She is the apple of our eye.
She's 18 months old, born at 33 weeks.
You're silly.
When you're born that early, you're no stranger to the NICU, but Oakland's case wasn't typical.
When she was first born, we did not know she was having seizures. No one would have known, not even her doctors.
It's called subclinical seizures. People think epilepsy, people think seizures, they see somebody convulsing. It's not like that. That's why we have to come in for the EEGs, because it's a brainwave that triggers on the monitor.
Mama get it. Until now, her parents Bryce and Kaelin Cardin would visit a much smaller space over at Norton Children's to monitor Oakland's seizures.
Now, opening this new neuro unit over here, it just makes it a lot easier.
It really helps us feel more comfortable coming to the hospital. She can keep calm and not have to have a lot of distractions.
A game changer for kids in need of extensive epilepsy testing and seizure monitoring.
Even with all the trials and tribulations she's been through, she's definitely a happy baby.
Having this is just amazing for us as a family.
What was once a 4-bed unit now holds 8, with nurses and physicians just outside your door.
So anytime any patient has any sort of seizures, we are all immediately aware.
To diagnose and to treat.
Also, once you have more data, there's definitely more to analyze and more to understand.
Using state-of-the-art equipment provided in part by the WHAS Crusade for Children.
We collect every year.
A cause that hits close to home for local firefighters.
It's something that we're super passionate about.
And their families.
With Crusade for Children, if you just put a quarter in, it counts. Money adds up.
And then it all comes back full circle with being able to help my daughter with better monitoring and getting this new unit open.
A lifeline for thousands of kids.
Your biggest worry, it's not about you anymore, it's about them.
Protecting them any way you can.
It's been a very busy week in the Cardin household.
Oakland's dad is trained in that area.
If you may have seen the small little bridge rescue that we had, I was a small part in that.
You say hi. Despite all the headlines, Cardin's most important title is dad.
She makes me proud every day. She's my baby girl. I'll give her anything that she ever wants.
We would do anything in the world for her.
In Louisville, Brooke Hash, WHAS 11 on your side.
What a full circle moment for our own local hero. And if you would, speak a little bit, you're all on the advisory panel, which represents where the funds go for the Crusade for Children. You can speak about the story if you want to, but also talk about the role. I'm fascinated by it. I've been allowed to participate and witness it for the past 6 weeks. And it's amazing to see the work that you all do in those communities. I know, Galia, you represent Galia.
I'll represent, but let's defer to some of the people who've been doing this for a really long time for the community.
Go ahead. Well, it is an amazing journey. It's 6 weeks, 2 days a week, 8 hours of interviews of those who submit a grant request to WHAS Crusade for Children, with the primary mission being that the funds that we collect to go back out into those communities to help specifically children with special needs. And it is, I never come away from those settings without being uplifted by the hard work teachers and researchers and medical teams and parents and people in the community do every day to make life better for these children that belong to all of us in southern Indiana and all of Kentucky. And it is work done with great joy, I believe, by all of us.
Yes, each year we receive requests. You see the good work being done, you just saw that on your monitors there. If we were able to get enough money and we give 100% of the grant request, we could have paid for the whole unit. We don't get that money, and this year, what is it, over $15 million requested of us.
Yeah, 240 grants this year.
240 grants, and then if we, that's why we're putting in a little nudge here for you. Crusade, it depends on what kind of Crusade collection we have on Crusade weekend. If we get in that, certainly every penny comes in goes out to the kiddies. But if we get $6 million, you saw the total board there, I think it was last year, whatever, $6 million, 22. $6 million. If we got $6 million in and they're asking for $15 million, you see the dilemma that we ministers go through, in which we have to be good stewards of the money that comes in. But again, if we had more money come into us, as we say to each group that comes to us, put the word out about what the Crusade does. If more people understand license plates, I'll put in a tab for the license plate. I've been asked many times what that license plate I have on my vehicle means. It gives me an opportunity to talk about the Crusade and the good work that the Crusade is doing in Kentucky and southern Indiana. But if we had enough money to come in, we'd gladly give every penny out to these folks who do great work for the kids.
Yeah, the Crusade work showcases how much need there is in our community. You know, as we do those grant hearings, we get to hear so many stories of parents who are attempting to nurture their young ones against many, many obstacles that it will take our entire community to help alleviate. And the Crusade does that very important and meaningful work. But we can't do it without the entire community pitching in with resources to ensure that we're helping families. And what I love about it is you never know who the Crusade will help. I've met so many people who have been impacted by the Crusade, and it makes me feel wonderful hearing the story of the firefighter who was a real life hero on that day for the lady on the bridge in the truck, and who knew that that his baby was one of the many children that have been positively impacted by the Crusade. So I'm really proud of our work.
And he, like so many firefighters in the community, collecting and supporting Crusade along the way. There's so many circles there. Right. And while I get to watch from afar the really hard work, and not just the time you spend here, but the time you spend going over these grants to be good stewards of the community's money in this regard. We often say that Louisville is a special place, that it's a community of compassion. Crusade is like the shining example of how we really recognize, like in this story, but in like so many others that we don't get to tell, that this is what makes us a community, how we care for these kids, and our commitment that we're all in this together, and that they're all of our kids, and that we all have the ability to be able to make a difference on whatever level, in the lives of young people who will grow up to be the leaders of our community, and those we cherish in families and congregational life and throughout the community. It's what says that we're a community, and it's what says that we're a compassionate community, that we care most about those who need the most.
And it's not only a community within this boundary, but it goes to the Appalachia area of Kentucky. It goes to
every county this year.
Every county. It's like, okay, it started here, but it's so good we can't keep it just here. We got to spread the love.
And the image of what we do here as a community, my understanding in the past of this WHAS, different ownerships and whatever that transpired, that we were told we were probably one of the few, very few, and one of the first who began to have some sort of program like this, sponsored for the local community. And as I recall, one of the previous owners had most of his managers come in and look at moral side of the news and also look at the Crusade efforts. So we're, in a sense, exporting it to even other communities beyond the state level. So,
it's a game changer.
Yes.
I mean, and that story happened so quickly. I think we were on a grant. I don't know if any of you were on the grant hearing with Norton, but they announced to us in the grant hearing that they did the ribbon cutting for that unit. Then the bridge rescue happened. Then his daughter's in there, 2 days later or 2 weeks later. Just It's amazing how it all came together.
We're all one family.
Right.
Well,
yes.
and it came out of a need from two moms that started it all because of their children's needs and how it's grown. Amazing.
Yeah. And from my perspective, being able to witness this over the past 6 weeks and what you all do, it's amazing. Like, I mean, you are truly good stewards of the money that's coming in, and like, you hold people accountable. You know, if it doesn't fit the mission of what we do, you make that known, and then you say, this is what you can do to approve your grant next year to come in, and you know, maybe we can do this or that to help you.
Right.
But it's,
So get ready, folks watching us and listening to us, get ready to support the crusade.
Yeah, fill those boots.
Be a part of this.
June 1st and 2nd.
There you go.
We have just a couple minutes left. Quick shout out to Simmons College, national champions.
Hey.
First time in school history, 145 years. Would y'all like to? That's probably easier to talk about that. Give them some kudos and tackle cursive writing for 2 minutes.
If I can just say, Simmons College is a treasure in the community, and you know, any excuse to get attention shined on it is outstanding. I mean, this is a wonderful accomplishment, and congratulations to the young women, you know, who were a part of it, and all the coaches and support staff that went to it. But it just reminds us that having an historical black college here in our community, the revival of Simmons College over the past number of years, the number of students who are positively impacted by it, can't say enough about what a great presence that is in the community. And congratulations to them all.
Yeah, Simmons is a huge asset, and it's been so exciting to see the progress that the school has made over the past decade, and even introducing their athletic program, and now they're just excelling by leaps and bounds. And so I too hope that the community will learn more about Simmons and support Simmons as it endeavors to be another educational option here in Louisville, and one that promises to really impact this community as we seek not to reach to the 55,000 degrees, that goal that we set for ourselves, I guess about 15 years ago.
It's been that long?
Yeah,
but still got to get there.
I think Mayor Abramson was it
Mayor for life?
I think Fisher, when he first started his first inauguration.
Yeah, it was. But I think it was initiated by Mayor Abramson. There was a committee, and then because Mayor Fisher, he did embrace that goal, and he rebranded it, and he added the 15,000 degrees, which were degrees that would be earned by the black community, which is, Simmons was a part of that work, and some other institutions, and it's gaining traction. I think we're somewhere close to it.
Wonderful.
I would applaud them. I mean, the older I get, when I look at youth doing all these wonderful things, I applaud them, and I keep saying, I wish I could have done that when I was their age, type thing, But it makes me, as an older man, it makes me feel kind of very much loud, but at the same time, just to applaud them again, like you said, and the college too.
I'm just thinking exciting it was the women. The boys get a lot of play time, and we celebrate male athletes as well. But the fact that these young women have taken this by storm, kudos to them.
And we're starting March Madness weekend with the national championship in Louisville already. So
there you go.
Can't beat that. So thanks for joining us on this week's edition of Moral Side of the News. Join us again next week for our all new discussion, and thank you to our panel today for a great discussion.